of democracy for Iran, which is the main opposition led by the Crown Prince Reza Pahlavi. And there's a lot happening. Let's go to Tehran. Massive attacks across the capital, government buildings and military sites getting destroyed. Crazy stuff, guys. This is insane. This reminds me of Baghdad in 2003. Look at that. We haven't seen anything like this since the beginning of the conflict, because we've been getting waves of attacks and targeted attacks on, for example, one building or one base, and then you see the next one, and then after a few minutes, after an hour, another wave of attacks. This, as I said, this reminds me of the first few minutes of the strikes in Baghdad, Iraq in 2003. It's still going on, and obviously we're in touch with our sources in the country, in major cities, Tehran, Yazd, Shiraz, and Esfahan, still non-stop bombings going on. Things have definitely escalated from tonight, and we are getting more videos. But first, before we get to the rest of this, the Islamic Republic have now also launched a second wave of missiles towards Israel as we speak. This is a few minutes ago. The alert that the Israelis received, you can see the center of Israel getting targeted, and also southern Israel as well. Actually, the first wave earlier tonight was southern Israel, like last night. Second wave is now towards central Israel and also Tel Aviv. They are intercepting them, of course, but we are also going to go live to Tel Aviv shortly with our live feed to find out what is going on in that city. But the IRGC propaganda machine is working very, very I was going to say effectively. It's not effective in the sense that it's actually working. It's effective in terms of being very productive, let's just say. They are very busy doing propaganda. So there is this infamous spokesperson for the IRGC who goes on the state media because they don't have anybody else, basically. They've turned into the Houthis in Yemen. There's just one guy, one head, keep ranting, right? This guy who goes on TV and basically threatens the US, he has now decided to speak English. He learned basic English, just 2 sentences, and decided to tell President Trump that he is fired, like The Apprentice.
Hey Taram, you are fired. You are familiar with this sentence. Thank you for your attention to this matter. The central headquarters of Khatam al-Anbiya. Hey Taram, you are fired. You are familiar with this sentence. Thank you for your attention to this matter. The central headquarters of Khatam al-Anbiya.
So it doesn't work. Firstly, hey, Trump. Well, I don't know what that is, but you have to be sassy. You know, you can't, the attitude is not really going well. But they did a few takes, and in order to practice, and we have exclusive access to the video footage of this man practicing different attempts to say that sentence, different versions. They tried differently, and we do have the exclusive video of what happened before this.
فإن القوات المسلحة الإيرانية ستضع إمارة رأس الخيمة تحت ضربات مباشرة وساحقة، وما النصر إلا من عند الله العزيز الحكيم.
Unlock the world's largest, most liquid financial market with Forex.com. Forex, or FX.
So there's growing concern of Iran's ballistic missile range after the regime launched an attack targeting Diego Garcia, a key U.S. and U.K. military base in the Indian Ocean, nearly 2,500 miles from Iran. Now, Prime Minister Netanyahu is warning other countries they could be targeted next.
If you want proof that Iran endangers the entire world, the last 48 hours have given it. They have now the capacity to reach deep into Europe. They already have fired on a European country, Cyprus. They are putting everyone in their sights.
All right, we got Joey Jones at the touchstring to break down Iran's ballistic missile capabilities. All right, Joey, walk us through the range of their missiles.
Yeah, so they've been building missiles for a while. Really what we're going to focus on today is what I call the K4, because I can't say the K word. It's very long and it's hard to say. But basically, the last missile that they told us about was in 2023, the K4. And we thought its range was about, I think it was right at 2,000 kilometers. So not very far. And they even went so far as to say that, listen, we're not trying to go very far because we don't want the world to feel threatened by us. So here's Iran, and you can start to see the miles, which kind of roughly translate. But right here is what I want you to focus on, 2,500 miles. That's this outer ring here, right inside of it, just about 2,000 miles. Right, this is Diego Garcia. That's double the distance that we thought they could fire. So this K4 missile being the furthest that we know about, we're going to go ahead and move to the next slide. This K4 missile being the furthest that we know about, just went twice as far, or we think this is the one they used. The big question here is we don't know what they used, and that's something we'll talk about in a second.
Well, interesting, Joey. The question really for me is, like, how do they actually launch them? How do they launch these things? Yeah,
so what's really cool, I've got a couple of pictures here that I want to show you. So they're zoomed in, so it's hard to see, but this is essentially a tractor and trailer. This is a truck with a trailer bed on it, with a missile on it. As you'll see, it's being raised. It's at about a 45-degree angle there. So what they do is this is mobile. So the word they use for it is called the Transporter Erector Launcher, the TEL. So this is what's really amazing. Well, this is what's really difficult about this. So basically, this trailer and that truck can drive out into the desert. You need another vehicle probably with some radar on it to get the coordinates right. But basically, it's mobile. It can be moved anywhere. The fuel used in the rocket is liquid. It's a little bit limiting on distance, but it's able to be stored and set somewhere for a long time. So this entire capability is about running around and being able to launch these from different places so that we can't just identify targets with intelligence and go after them. They can move. They can move in hours. They can move hundreds of miles overnight. And so it makes it a little bit more difficult. Also, what this does is, this is very big, but there's a Russian version called the 3M54. The export version is called the Club K that can pretty much fit in a Connex box. So we can go in the back of a tractor and trailer. So if they're adapting that technology, or if they bought it from Russia, you have to assume every tractor and trailer in Iran is potentially an anti-ship missile or something like this.
Joey, you said that we weren't aware that Iran had the capability to launch a missile this far. So what kind of rocket was launched at the Diego Garcia base, and is it different than the ones that we knew that they had? Yeah, so I'm not going to pick on you on nomenclature here, but basically this is a missile. What makes it a missile is that the back half is a rocket. A rocket is a propulsion system. You point it in a direction, that's where it goes. It's not guided. The rocket has fuel in it, just like the Gemini space rockets, And so what happens is, this actually goes suborbital. I didn't show you on the last screen as easily. There's a screen in a minute I'll show you. This goes hundreds of miles above the surface, not into the atmosphere, above the surface. So the higher you launch it from, theoretically, the higher it goes. It goes hundreds of miles above the surface. When it does, this part here breaks off, just like we see with space program. And this part here, this is called the reentry vehicle, which encompasses the warhead. There's other words for it. And what happens is when it goes exoatmospheric, gravity's not as big of a deal, this breaks off, and what we believe, because they're not just telling us, is that this warhead, this reentry vehicle, exoatmospheric, has thrusters on it that orient it towards its target,
and then it lets gravity do its job, and it comes back down. So the reason why that's important is what we know about this specific rocket, or this specific missile, which is the best one that we know they have, the K4, is that this is liquid fuel, which limits them a little bit on distance, but allows them to store it. And it's a single stage, which means once this burns up, that's as far as it goes. What we're trying to find out now, or what probably people other than me know, is if they added a second stage in here to get it further, or if it's actually a completely different reentry vehicle that has some sort of exo-atmospheric thrust in itself. We're not really sure how they got so far because of what we know about its motor. They call that a rocket motor. So that's what we're trying to figure out. Another thing is that Israel is incredibly tight-lipped with their post-blast analysis, their threat analysis after the fact. So when they get hit with these missiles, they don't always share that information with anyone, to include us. Hopefully this landing near Diego Garcia, we are recovering that and we're getting that information. It's not that Israel's a bad partner, it's that that's how they're able to keep things covert, because as you can see, our own Pentagon didn't want to share things with other allies either. So that's just kind of part of it.
So, Joey, you kind of already walked us through how the ballistic missile works, and we appreciate that because we hear all these things, and, civilians hear rocket, we hear missile, we hear all these different types, and sometimes it's hard for us to decipher which is which and what that means for us. I want to go back because you already explained kind of how it works. Can you go through the ballistic missile stages that you have on that screen there so that we can really conceptualize this? Yeah,
so I'm not able to draw on this screen, or I would add a little bit in here, but I want you to suspend your disbelief, use your imagination, because I'm going to teach you about how we intercept these. When they are launched, and that's what this is showing here, they actually go exo-atmospheric. So they go, this shows 500 to 1,000 miles. It depends on the missile. The missile we're talking about, we thought was like 150 to 500. So if it goes that far up, what have they done? One thing they could have done was just lighten the weight of the warhead on it and gotten more altitude that way. We just don't know yet if they actually have a better missile or if they modified this missile to where it has less of a warhead on it but could go further. So once it gets exo-atmospheric, then it breaks away. The rocket motor goes away. A couple other things happen that allows the reentry vehicle or the warhead, depending on what it is, to orient itself exo-atmospheric. And I know I've said that a lot, but I don't know a better word. A little bit further away from gravity and air. Artillery. You decide where it's going down here. It can adjust itself a little bit up here, but it can't completely change where it's going up here. When it starts reentry, here it is. What they're saying is that this reentry vehicle has broken down into a warhead at this stage. At that point, that's when our THAAD system uses radar, generally where we think we're going to get hit, and that might be the first time we know that that missile is headed towards us. So it's this part here, when it's reaching Mach 8. It's already 8 to 16, so it's supersonic. And that's how much time we have to lock onto it over the radar and send THAAD towards it. And basically what it's doing is the computer is calculating, well, if it's here now and it's moving that fast, it'll be there in a few seconds. So we may be intercepting it way down here. Look at that big arc. And this is hundreds of miles high and thousands of miles wide. And in all of this arc, it's this section down here most of the time where we're finding it and intercepting it. One thing I know is that some of our THAAD radars have been hit. You take those radars out, now you've got a hole in your dome, in your gold, whatever you want to call it. And so the reason why that's important is some of these are guided in ways that one day we talk about hypersonic guided missiles. This point and shoot method may not work. So this is the evolution of defense. So when President Trump says he wants to raise all this money to put a golden dome over the United States, it's advanced technology from what we're doing now with the THAAD, something other than radar. If these things get the ability to change their target, change elevation and descent, become basically an unmanned aircraft on their way down, the ability to intercept them or take them out just gets so much more difficult. So the advancement of their missiles, that's a big deal. And when President Trump says, hey, they're advancing their missile program, he doesn't just mean they can point and shoot further. He means what they're able to do once it's launched that makes it harder for us to defeat it. That is a big deal. So I'm going to wrap it up this way. It's not as big of a deal that it went so far. It's how did it go so far?
This game, you're not ready for it.
On this Sunday night, a dangerous ultimatum. President Trump sets a Monday deadline for Tehran to open the Strait of Hormuz, threatening to strike Iran's power plants.
That would certainly hit the people of Iran even harder.
How the Iranian regime is responding, with the war sending gas prices soaring.
Sometimes I feel like a sheep being led to slaughter.
Some countries are offering relief at the pumps. Will Canada follow suit? Plus, remembering the first face-off, how a northern community is marking a special anniversary in hockey history.
Global National. Reporting tonight, Jeff Semple.
Iran exchanging fire with the U.S. and Israel, with both sides hitting residential buildings and nuclear weapon sites. The war in Iran is now approaching a dangerous crossroads after the U.S. president's latest ultimatum. Good evening and thank you for joining us. Donald Trump has set a deadline of Monday night for the Iranian regime to open the Strait of Hormuz, the critical choke point for the world's oil supply. If not, the U.S. is now threatening civilian targets. Trump posting Saturday night that the U.S. will obliterate Iranian power plants unless the Strait of Hormuz is opened. Tehran says the strait is open to all friendly vessels, and it warned the shipping lane will be completely closed if Trump makes good on his threat. Iran's parliamentary speaker also warned that if its power plants are attacked, critical energy and water infrastructure across the region and beyond would become legitimate targets and be irreversibly destroyed. The regime released this map pinpointing the locations of power plants across the Middle East. The decisions in the coming hours risk plunging the region into darkness and chaos. Candace Cole begins our coverage tonight.
The exchange of airstrikes continue between Israel, Iran, and Hezbollah fighters in Lebanon as the 23-day war continues to play out with no end in sight. Sunday, Iran struck civilian sites in 2 southern Israeli cities, injuring over 100 residents and damaging apartment buildings.
Luckily, no one was killed, but that's due to luck.
Iran's actions in retaliation against Israel's attacks on bridges in Lebanon crossing the Litani River in its pursuit against Hezbollah. This as U.S. President Donald Trump threatened Saturday to obliterate Iranian power plants if Iran fails to fully open the Strait of Hormuz within 48 hours, a major choke point for a fifth of the world's oil supply.
That would certainly hit the people of Iran even harder. And remember, initially, Trump claimed that he wanted to liberate the people from the regime.
In response, Iran's military warned if Trump makes good on his threat, the Islamic Republic will respond with attacks on, quote, technological and political targets associated with Tehran's enemies outside the Persian Gulf region, according to the IRGC-affiliated Fars news agency. Already, Iran has launched 2 missiles targeting the British-American Diego Garcia base in the Chagos Islands, nearly 4,000 kilometers away, raising concerns that Iran could target Central European cities as the war drags on.
If this would be true, it is the more evidence that what the president is doing here, taking out the ballistic missile capability, taking out the nuclear capability from Iran, is crucial.
In addition to targeting sites outside the Middle East, Iran has also threatened to bomb desalination plants in the region, critical for supplying drinking water to Middle East countries.
It's probably the most significant crisis since the Arab oil embargo in the 70s. Unless this kind of stops somehow miraculously in the next few days, we're going to see a very big jump in prices in every single material around the world.
All this as Congress, the only entity in the U.S. with the power to declare war, continues to be sidelined by Trump on his plan going forward.
And right now, we've spent $20 billion in the first 2 weeks of this war alone. The terror threat around the world against the United States and Americans is spreading, and there's no off-ramp.
Now the Pentagon is set to ask Congress to greenlight another $200 billion to help fund the war in Iran. Jeff?
Candace Cole in Washington. Thanks, Candace. The war is sending gas prices soaring around the world, including here at home, and a growing number of countries in Europe and Asia have now introduced temporary subsidies and tax cuts to help soften the surge in gas prices. Mackenzie Gray on whether
Canadians can expect any relief. The weather in Vancouver is right for a Sunday drive.
How pissed off are people?
But it'll cost you to get your car out with the highest gas prices in the country.
It is what it is. Although sometimes I feel like a sheep being led to slaughter.
You'll need your gloves at the pumps in frosty Ottawa and in Winnipeg, where drivers are in solution mode.
I'm feeling like I'm going to have to start taking the bus, like walking.
It might be time to crack out the bus schedule with gas prices now over $1.
Now, sometimes you have to escalate to de-escalate. That's according to senior Trump administration official Scott Bessent, while Iran launched successive waves of missile attacks on Israel, including cluster munitions. Again, in the last hour, the Ministry of Defense has said that RAF Typhoon and F-35 jets have continued their defensive missions, while a UK counter-drone unit managed to shoot down an Iranian drone during the night. Last night, 2 ballistic missiles evaded Israeli air defenses in the south of the country, injuring more than 150 people, and a reminder of the threat still posed by Iran. Dimona last night. Whoa! Same strike, different angle, just a few miles from Israel's nuclear weapons facility. A tit for tat, the Iranians said. Soon after, Arad, also southern Israel, first no sound, then with sound. No one was badly injured in this flat. This is just a small taste of what civilians have endured in Iran and Lebanon, where thousands have been killed in airstrikes. But by Israel, last night was bad. Lives brutally interrupted by a war their government had told them was unavoidable, but that until last night, here at least, scarred only their imagination. Dozens of people who didn't make it into their shelters were injured here last night. No deaths, though, recorded. And frankly, that is a bit of a miracle. But psychologically, for a country that thought it had the upper hand in this 3-week-old war, this is deeply damaging and troubling, because clearly some of the ballistic missiles from Iran are getting through. And now the Israeli government wants you to think that what Iran has done here could also happen in Europe, thanks to the Iranian missiles fired at the US-UK base in Diego Garcia yesterday.
The range of the ballistic missile can cover entire Europe. This threat is not a threat only in Israel. It's a threat on large parts of Asia, all of Europe, and large parts of Africa. The Iranian regime is a real threat for the entire region. This is the face of the Iranian regime.
Why did this missile get through?
Well, we have had so far great interception rate, over 90%. We'll study what happened here and get better. We always want to be 100%. But even the best defense systems in the world are 100%.
So when Trump and your prime minister said that basically they had taken out the ballistic missile program, that wasn't true, was it?
Well, we've taken out a lot of their capability. The amount of fire has gone down 80-90% of the amount of fire, and we've done a great job, and we're going to keep pushing forward to make sure that even the few that they're firing right now, we're going to prevent them from firing those as well.
Israel may want this war to be as existential for Europe as it is for them, but they're also worried that Trump could pull out early, because Iran has managed to turn a war of economic necessity that Trump didn't want and is now losing. In the Strait of Hormuz, once a pub quiz question for shipping nerds, we're all getting a geography lesson these days about this narrow waterway and shipping death trap. And Trump has weighed in overnight as only he can or must. In this post, he threatened to obliterate Iran's power plants if the Strait of Hormuz isn't opened within 48 hours. From what we know about the regime's resistance so far, it is hard to see them caving in. They've already put up with daily and nightly bombardments and could escalate the conflict.
We just entered Hezbollah territory here, so now we got to be a bit more careful. Immediately, you have all these giant posters up of the martyrs and the new leader of Hezbollah.
What is the terrorism here? These people in the street are terrorists. Are you attacked?
This isn't what you think of when you think terror stronghold.
but this is Hezbollah land.
I don't know if this will make me terrorist, but it was a kind of resistance.
In February, we came to Lebanon to understand what exactly Hezbollah is and why.
What is the terrorism here? These people in the street are terrorists. Are you attacked?
This isn't what you think of when you think terror stronghold, but this is Hezbollah land.
I don't know if this will make me terrorist, but it was a kind of resistance.
In February, we came to Lebanon to understand what exactly Hezbollah is and why another war was about to break out.
They killed us, they killed our friends, they killed our families.
Hezbollah launched around 200 missiles at northern Israel overnight in a coordinated attack with Iran.
To find out, we traveled from Beirut into the heart of Hezbollah territory, where we interviewed supporters and opponents of the group. If you want to understand what it's like living with Hezbollah, come with us from Beirut to their turf. Our journey started in Beirut, which is just 40 miles but a world away. Lebanon's capital is a cosmopolitan and relatively liberal city, but as you head east, that quickly fades away. As we drove along the highway connecting Beirut to Damascus, Syria, we got a reminder in why Hezbollah was formed.
You have to remember the Shia community was not organized, completely marginalized. They had literally nobody to rely on. It became more organized, turned more into a political party.
These tribes, in order to conduct their commerce, used to also get a lot of cover from Hezbollah. So they would give them security cover. They would help them kind of infiltrate the state and be able to conduct their businesses.
So that's where we're taking you guys. Maybe we could see a strike or two.
You're saying this was at one point, this is like the Hamptons,
Yeah.
of Lebanon.
So it's an hour from Damascus, it's an hour from Beirut. And that's where everybody used to go. You can see like these nice, beautiful homes. But everybody left after the Civil War started in 1975. So it's abandoned. And we're going to see a lot of abandoned houses.
So in this area, it's a mix of Christians and Druze.
Yeah.
And during the Civil
Exactly.
War, they were fighting each other, right? Like in here? Is that?
And Palestinians and a bunch of others. Everybody was fighting everybody. Hey, you can film him and you can see we're breaking into my own house.
This home was once owned by Ramsey's family. Today, it symbolizes Lebanon's decline.
Hey man, don't step on the broken glass.
So they literally just got up and left.
Like,
Never came back.
Nope, couldn't come back. Or
It's wild to think this whole area was left vacant 51 years ago. That's when Lebanon's first civil war started. Since then, there's been wars here on and off, including one that's ongoing right now to the east and south of here. We're headed out there, and it's just a little bit east of here where Hezbollah was founded in 1982.
Lebanon was once a hub of culture, banking, and tourism, known as the Switzerland of the Middle East. But in 1975, tensions between the country's Christians, Shia, and Sunni Muslims exploded into civil war.
There was the Cairo agreements that happened between the Palestinians and the Lebanese state right before the Civil War, which basically allowed the Palestinians to have weapons in Lebanon and to fight from Lebanon. And for a lot of people and a lot of historians, that was the beginning of the end, because you're allowing someone to fight a fight that's not your national fight on your sovereign land.
During that war, two things happened. In 1979, Iran underwent its Islamic Revolution, and Israel invaded Lebanon, first occupying just the south and then half the country, seeking to install a friendly Christian government in Beirut.
They saw Lebanon as a breeding ground for more Palestinian uprisings against them and for more fighting to happen against them, and they just wanted to put a stop to that. There's a lot of people who claim that there were also a lot of territorial ambitions to Israel, that Israel really wanted part of the Lebanese land for water and other reasons.
The combination of events created Hezbollah.
The local people told us that 2 days ago, some 400 Iranian commandos moved in here after a journey through Iraq and Syria.
That happened here in the Bekaa Valley, one of Lebanon's 3 predominantly Shia regions.
So we just entered Hezbollah territory here, and immediately you have all these giant posters up of the martyrs, as they say, and the new leader of Hezbollah. So now we got to be a bit more careful because they are not friendly to people who are taking pictures and videos without their permission out here.
when you're in a village that has a lot of people who have joined Hezbollah, they have their own schools, their own supermarkets, they even have their own IDs that they issue. They don't feel like the army could be defending their interests and their lives in the south. So this is why they would say, I mean, yeah, now that we're strong, we have our weapons, we can take care of ourselves. Nobody ever took care of us. Why are they going to take care of us now?
Okay, so right now we are in the Hezbollah territory. You can see here that this used to be a big railway. Totally neglected now, corruption. That's one of the reasons Hezbollah is so prominent in this area, is because the services are horrible. There are no government services. They started handing out money, giving people food, everything like that in this area. The whole drive-in, you're passing posters of Ayatollah Khomeini, the Iranian leader, Qasem Soleimani. They're all posted up on the drive-in here. It's a little bit eerie. So we were at those train tracks. A couple guys came up in kind of like military uniforms, and their task here was stopping smugglers from getting stuff back and forth across the Syrian border, which is just like a mile or so that way. First, they warned me we may hear some explosions from Israeli drone strikes. 2, they gave me a cigarette, and when I said I didn't want it, they forced it on me and told me to smoke it. 3, it turned out these guys were on the local equivalent of cops, where they showed them busting Syrians for importing fake spices that were actually wood chips.
خلينا نشوف شو بقلبه هيدا الزعتر. احنا عم ناكل خشب بدل الزعتر.
Hey everyone, I am back safe and sound in New York City. However, Lebanon is now up in flames. I'm recording this in mid-March. The war is underway over there. We just did a full breakdown of the conflict over there, talking to our sources on the ground, behind the scenes conversations about the experience of Lebanon, kind of putting some of my thoughts about what I learned there and subsequent trip to Israel. If you're interested in learning about this, check out the Substack link below, where you can get the full conversation between me and the other co-hosts on this channel, Max, where we talk about the war in Lebanon. We talk about the whole situation now and how it relates to what we saw in this video. If you're curious about that, check the link below. And now back to Hezbollah land. So is it only Shia who support Hezbollah, or like, what do you think of the organization as a Christian?
Honestly, I used to be a supporter. Like, I used to support Hezbollah when I was first introduced to politics. You know, they had a few victories. They did liberate the south from Israeli occupation, which is pretty much what you're seeing right now in Palestine. They did also stop ISIS at the border, but they became too big. They became too arrogant, too open with their allegiance to Iran, and that's when, you know, things started to change.
Now, there are still explosions here daily because despite a ceasefire being in place, Israel has continued with artillery and drone strikes targeting Hezbollah. That ceasefire came after a year-long war, which began when Hezbollah launched rockets into Israel a day after the October 7th attack in 2023 and ended after the Pager attack, the killing of Hezbollah's leadership, and the crushing of the group in 2024. Despite losing its leadership and significant strength, though, Hezbollah still controls swaths of Lebanon, like Baalbek, where we headed next. All right, so we just reached our destination here, which is this town of Baalbek that has these Roman ruins. But getting here, I mean, just driving through, and it's just one Hezbollah poster after another, picture of the Iranian leader, of the Hamas commanders, a lot of kind of sketchy vehicles, constant chance that a drone is going to come through and pop one of these cars on the road. This site is one of the best preserved Roman temples on earth. Yet because of Hezbollah and the war, we had the place to ourselves.
So actually, there are a lot of writings on the wall that dates hundreds of years, centuries. And this one is a very famous Arabic writing. It actually says, like and subscribe to Raqqa News and share occasionally if you want. So that's pretty deep stuff.
And it was here that we met Ahmed, a local cultural figure who supports Hezbollah. How close to this were they bombing?
Here, 100 meters.
They were bombing 100 meters from here. What was around here that they were trying to bomb?
The culture of resistance in Lebanon. Resistance started from Baalbek.
He led us from the temple down Baalbek's main strip and to his office. So right there's this like Hezbollah bank that got bombed in the war here, and it's worth noting it's super precise. I mean, we're in a very dense, crowded area, and boom, just that one corner area where the bank was is gone. Everything else, the whole building is still intact.
Here it's a cultural club. This is the main room where We do the cultural discussions about books, movies.
It's interesting because if I look right out the window right here, there's an Iranian flag, and then there's the Hezbollah poster.
It's wide diversity in Balad. We accept all the opinions except one limit any types of peace with Israel. We are against that, and we don't accept that.
The war here, I mean, it's still ongoing in this area.
This mother is carrying the body of her 6-year-old daughter, Yasmina. Israeli bombs pierce her grief. She's also burying her 3 other daughters, 9-year-old Malika, Zara, 12, and Zainab, 13, along with their cousin, 11-year-old Sadek. Just absolutely heartbreaking scenes. There's body after body after body. Tiny little bodies. These ones having to be carried on the bed because there's just only parts and remnants and pieces of them left. These are just 5 of over 110 children killed this month since war began anew in Lebanon on March 2nd. 9 graves they've had to dig in the last 24 hours for just so much pain in this one tiny little village. The site of the strike was the children's grandparents' house, where they were playing when the bomb hit. It came without warning and wiped out almost the entire family. You can see bits of blood across this rubble here. Pieces of books, some shoes. Mohammed is the father of the girls, who he's just buried. They were a tight-knit family. I'm so sorry for your loss. I can't imagine what you're going through today and what went through your mind when that airstrike hit.
يعني صرت اركض انا قمت حافي على حجار وشو اسمه وانا مضروب هون والدمع بينزل صرت فتش شيل اولادي وبي.
I mean, the Israelis say that Hezbollah is using children and using civilians as human shields. Do you think there's any truth to that?
في شهداء من الحزب. نحن عائله اهل الجنوب ما بيركعوا لا لاسرائيل ولا لامريكا اللي عم تدعمهم بالسلاح.
Across the country, the Israeli military is rapidly ramping up its bombing campaign and expanding its ground invasion. CNN obtained permission from Hezbollah to report in one of their strongholds, the southern city of Tyre. At a civil defense center, outgoing rocket fire breaks the temporary calm. Soon after, the Israeli military called to warn nearby residents to leave their homes immediately.
لا بدك تعطينا شوية وقت لحتى العالم تضبط بغراضها وتظهر منها.
But not every.
A residential building in Israel burned through the overnight hours following an Iranian missile attack. The building, one of 2 locations hit in the barrage. Emergency services say at least 80 people were left injured across the southern portion of the country.
Iran targeted a civilian area. They're doing that as a mass murder weapon. Luckily, no one was killed, but that's due to luck.
Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu surveying the damage, vowing to respond.
But not on civilians. We're going after the regime. We're going after the IRGC, this criminal gang.
But as Israel condemns Iran's actions against its civilians, the country's military is ramping up its demolition of homes in Lebanon.
Accelerate the destruction of Lebanese homes and the contact villages in order to thwart threats to Israeli communities, in accordance with the Rafah model in Gaza.
Israel's defense minister adding that the Israeli army is also destroying all bridges over the country's Litani River that are, quote, used for terrorist activity.
In order to prevent the passage of Hezbollah terrorists and weapons southward.
Israel's continued bombardment of Lebanon has left more than 800,000 people displaced across the country. The Lebanese Red Crescent adds that at least 1,000 people have also been killed. Lebanon was dragged into the war after the Iranian proxy militia group Hezbollah launched a series of rockets towards Israel on March 2nd. The U.S.-Israeli war on Iran is now in its fourth week. Thousands have been killed, multiple countries have been attacked, and the entire world has felt the impact in their wallets. Prices of oil and gas have skyrocketed to levels not seen in nearly 4 years due to Iran's closure of the Strait of Hormuz. On Saturday night, Trump said Iran has 48 hours to reopen the critical shipping passage, otherwise the U.S. will begin to, quote, obliterate Iranian power plants.
President Trump can decide to fulfill the ultimatum and attack the Iranian facilities, the infrastructure, but then obviously the Iranians are going to retaliate not only against the infrastructure in the Gulf states, the electricity one, but also, for example, the desalination factories. So we are approaching a severe expansion of the war.
Stateside, some Democrats are criticizing the president's ultimatum.
They've got no vision, no plan, no exit strategy. They clearly didn't anticipate some of the things that have happened, including the closure of the Strait of Hormuz. Donald Trump should keep his reckless mouth shut before he gets somebody killed.
Iran has responded to Trump's ultimatum, saying if the U.S. strikes Iranian power plants, Iran will, quote, irreversibly destroy the region's critical infrastructure and energy sites. The country's leaders are adding that at this time, the Strait of Hormuz is only closed to Iran's enemies, but if Trump follows through on his threat, it will be closed to everyone. Carling Donahue, City News, Toronto.
Week 3 and counting. President Trump's call for help falls on deaf ears. Trump has asked American allies to send warships to keep the Strait of Hormuz open for shipping. So far, England, Germany, and Spain have rejected his request outright. Others are hesitant to get involved. Trump responded saying it is now up to the countries that are dependent on Iranian oil to secure safe transit of tankers through that strategic waterway. So what is Trump's next move? Should the United States send boots on the ground to occupy Iran's oil-rich Karg Island? Doran Kemple is former deputy commander of the IDF's most elite special forces unit. He's an American citizen and the founder and CEO of Bond, a rapidly growing AI-powered security company. Doran, considering these latest developments, what's Trump's next move? What's he likely to do now?
Thank you, Gary. If I may, I'd like to take a step back and remind all of us what are the likely aims of the war, the 4 strategies that apply to these aims, what is the status, and where do the Strait of Hormuz fit into that? Would that make sense, sir?
Sure, it sure would. Go for it.
Terrific. So let's take a step back and remind ourselves. Iran works for the Russian-Chinese bloc. They're the means by pressure on the U.S. on the West. That needs to be eliminated before they reach nuclear power. So that is a problem. This is a cancer that needs to be solved. With that, number 2, eliminate the cancer. Delaying the cancer entails a strategy that is already on its
You are watching live now. I'm Austin Westfall. We have been tracking the Middle East closely and news on Truth Social. Saying the Strait of Hormuz, with 48 hours from this exact point in time, the United States of America will hit and obliterate their various power plants, starting with the biggest one first. That's all it says. Thank you for your attention to this matter. The president wraps by saying. So again, the president apparently putting a 2-day deadline on Iran to fully open one of the world. President just sent this out moments ago on Truth. We also learned that the Trump administration is going to be lifting sanctions on Iranian oil stranded at the sea under a 1 month.
If you spend too much time on Twitter or get your news from the liberal mainstream media, you may have gotten the impression that the president's supporters are abandoning him in droves over Operation Epic Fury, his war to prevent your grandchildren from having to face off against a nuclear army. This war against his will by the nefarious Bibi Netanyahu, according to people like Tucker Carlson, Marjorie Taylor Greene, Megyn Kelly, and now Joe Kent, a counterterrorism official who resigned this FBI investigation into his penchant for leaking government secrets to Carlson. Trump has betrayed everything he once stood for, they say, and all the young people know it. In light of their opposition to Trump, the mainstream media, left and right, is complete womp womp. That's what we learned about America. Been called, have always been more eager to try to undermine us by aggressively engaging with anti
We're in Dearborn. This is the call of prayer that goes off 5 times a day here in the United States.
And trying to blackmail the entire world. What more proof do you need that this regime that threatens the entire world has to be stopped? Israel and the United States are working together for the entire world. And it's time to see the leaders of the rest of the countries join up. I'm happy to say that I can see some of them beginning to move in that direction, but more is needed. President Trump's call to have the international community confront this terrorist fanatic regime of zealots, that is a call not only for the security of America and the security of Israel, it's for the security of the entire world. And it's time for them to act.
Sir, what will your response be to this attack on Israeli civilians?
We're responding with great force, but not on civilians. We're going after the regime and trying to blackmail the entire world.
States conducted this operation with a very clear goal in mind. I haven't got a chance to see a lot of reporting. I don't understand what the confusion is. Let me explain it to you, and I'll do it once again as clearly as possible. Perhaps you'll report it that way. The United States is conducting an operation to eliminate the threat of Iran's short-range ballistic missiles and the threat posed by their Navy, particularly to naval assets. That is what it is focused on doing right now, and it's doing quite successfully. I'll leave it to the Pentagon and the Department of War to discuss the tactics behind and the progress that's being made. That is the clear objective of this mission. The second question that been asked is why now? Well, there's two reasons why. The first, it's really clear that if Iran came under attack by anyone, the United States or Israel or anyone, they were going to respond against the United States. The orders are true because, in fact, within an hour of attack on the leadership compound, the missile forces in the south and in the north, for that matter, had already been activated to launch. In fact, those had already been pre-positioned. The third is the assessment that was made that if we stood and waited for that attack to come first before we hit them, we would suffer much higher casualties. And so the president we knew that would precipitate an attack against American forces, and we knew that if we didn't preemptively go after them before they launched those attacks, we would suffer higher casualties and perhaps even higher those killed. And then we would all be here answering questions about why we knew that and didn't act.
Donald Trump is operating in the tradition of our greatest peacetime/wartime presidents. Despite the outrageous media coverage in this country, despite the constant efforts under Operation Sabotage by a Democrat Party that is hell-bent on losing this war, that is hell-bent on undermining the commander-in-chief, that is hell-bent on undermining our armed forces, and yes, is giving aid and comfort, propaganda to the enemy, as are individuals who I call the woke right neo-fascists, who are stirring the anti-Semitism pot, who are stirring the pot. They are different than the same as we heard in the 1930s, and just as disgusting, evil, and reprehensible. All this talk about this war was imminent. Why did we decide now? All this talk about what is the mission? All of this is used to try and obstruct, undermine the spirit, and divide this nation. At a time when Donald Trump is doing what great presidents do, Shame on you, Democrats, for what you are doing to this country. You will be remembered forever. In the 1930s, shame on woke right of fascists. You will be remembered, the unpatriotic, anti-American Jew haters. Roosevelt would do in these circumstances today, or Abraham Lincoln, or George Washington, or even Ronald Reagan when they didn't have nuclear weapons in Iran. What do you think they would do? They would take action.
في إيران لأنه يعتبرها العائق الأكبر في طريق إنجاز مخططه، ولذلك فأي هجوم عدوان أمريكي مساند للعدو الإسرائيلي ضد إيران في إطار الهدف نفسه الرامي لتمكين العدو الإسرائيلي من السيطرة على المنطقة، وهذا لا يمكن لأنه يعني مصادرة حرية واستقلال وكرامة أمتنا واستعبادها وإذلالها ومسخ هويتها واحتلال أوطانها ونهب ثرواتها وتثبيت معادلة الاستباحة للدم والعرض والأرض والمقدسات. ولذلك فالمعركة هي ملها النجاة التي والعزة والنصر في التحرك في الجهاد في سبيل الله تعالى، كما قال تعالى
CNN is the first American network allowed into Iran since the beginning of the war. Our senior international correspondent, Fred Pleitgen, and his team are in Tehran. And we should note that CNN can only operate in Iran with government approval. Here is Fred's report from the streets of Tehran from a few hours ago, just before some of the most recent attacks were launched against the country.
There have been a lot of airstrikes here on Tehran today. A lot of the shops here are closed and have been closed since the military confrontation started exactly a week ago. I'd say about 20% of the shops might be open. So what we've done today is we've gone to a couple of shops, spoken to the shopkeepers and also some customers just to see how they're faring.
We are definitely worried about our lives, but we have no other choice. This is my occupation, and it's about providing daily food stuff. We cannot close the shop. We have to go to work, but with fear, while not knowing what may happen.
Everyone's scared. Those are bombs. It's no joke. When there's a bombing, everyone thinks of how they love their life. I'm not saying we're not afraid. Of course we are. Anyone who says they're not afraid is lying, because every human being values their life.
A drastic decline in customers at this fruit shop as well.
Our sales now are about a quarter or a fifth of what they used to be. 70 or 80% of our customers are businesses. When the war broke out,
now the people here, of course, have already also to continue to hit Iran hard.
We know the administration is also focusing on trying to end the war between Russia and Ukraine. And it's interesting, some of those discussions are connected to this conflict in Iran. What can you tell us about that?
Well, just today, U.S. negotiators did hold another round of talks with Ukrainian leaders in Florida. U.S. Special Envoy Steve Witkoff says those talks were constructive, but we know this has been a really slowly progressing discussions. And now this is all connecting back to this war with Iran as well. A source familiar does tell News Nation that Russian President Vladimir Putin told the Trump administration earlier in the week that Russia would agree to stop sharing intelligence with Iran if the U.S. agreed to stop sharing intelligence with Ukraine. But the Trump administration rejected that offer. And the FBI is now warning of a new Russian cyber phishing campaign. Director Capital says Russian intelligence actors are targeting U.S. leaders on communication apps like Signal. And he says they're going after these high intelligence people like government officials, military leaders, politicians, and journalists. So the FBI is asking everyone to start taking precautions to avoid falling for these phishing scams. Things like treating unknown messages with suspicion and not clicking on links until you verified them, Natasha.
Israel made us do it.
Why are we at war with Iran?
Great question. I mean, the simplest explanation, might be the one that they gave 24 hours. Israel made us do it. That Bibi decided on this timeline. Netanyahu decided he wanted to attack, and he convinced Trump to join him by scaring Trump.
I know they had no media there, which was the family's wish and stuff. But the president was there, and the defense secretary was there, and I thought I heard you say you were all the families were in their own
separate
area.
And there were also a myriad of generals, lieutenant colonels, high-ranking officials, senators, congressmen. I can't remember all their names.
So when the president and the defense secretary came up to you, what did you talk about? I mean,
I was the first person, right out the bat, looked President Trump in the eye and told him who I was. He said, "Yes, Mr. Simmons, I know who you are." I said, "Tyler Simmons was my only son. He paid the ultimate price." And much to my pleasant surprise, I saw emotion in the president's face. Because usually when you see him on television, he's just being the stern leader. I get that. But his humanity showed in that moment. He said, "I can respect the man that can look the president in the face and tell him exactly what he thinks." I think it was one of the few times that he had to look up. Because actually, President Trump is
Oh, it's absolutely heartbreaking, Caitlin. I'm a strong supporter of our military and the great men and women who serve. I think they're some of the greatest among us, and their families who are so concerned about them right now. These are 13 lives that I believe should not have been lost. This war is not something that Americans voted for in 2020. As a matter of fact, we voted for the opposite. We voted for no more foreign wars, no more regime change. And we were told by many members in the administration throughout the campaign, J.D. Vance, Tulsi Gabbard, and others, that they believed that going to war with Iran would be a terrible idea. It was something that Charlie Kirk himself had said over and over again. And Donald Trump, President Trump, I voted for him three times, fought for him to become president.
Was Iran on the verge of getting a nuclear weapon?
No, they weren't, 3 weeks ago when this started, and they weren't in June either. I mean, the Iranians have had a religious ruling, a fatwa, against actually developing a nuclear weapon since 2004. That's been in place since 2004. That's available in the public sphere. But then also we had no intelligence to indicate that fatwa was being disobeyed or it was on the cusp of being lifted. The Iranian strategy, it's actually pretty pragmatic. The Iranians are obviously aware of what's taking place in their region. And their strategy was to not completely abandon their nuclear program because they saw what happened to Muammar Gaddafi in Libya when he said, hey, I've got no more nukes. I'll do what you say. I'll give up my nukes.
And we gave him the Nobel Peace Prize?
Yeah, we regime changed him, and he was executed on
that. So that's the lesson I think that the entire region took from that.
Yeah,
when Hillary Clinton,
unfortunately, that is what the neocon neoliberal warmonger. That's the lesson. Region. First, Iran also knew that if they came out and said, "Okay, we've got a nuke," whether they were bluffing or not,
right? Saddam Hussein,
I
think
he was hung by some people, after. And when we always assessed that there were either several months or a year, 2 years.
10-5, that message. EMS just sent us a message. A little violent EVP on the.
Said it wouldn't recommend driving over it. So again, you can see there the two holes. There's one big crater right there. And then here's the other one right there. Estero thinks it's repairable in 2 hours. The thing is, I would assume if they try to repair it, that Israel might strike it again. So I want to show you this footage again. But what the article said, again, is that Israel strikes main bridge in South Lebanon, orders destruction of homes near border. And they say that Israel struck a main bridge linking Lebanon south to the rest of the country on Sunday after ordering its military to destroy all crossings over the Litani River, which is, I think, about 20 miles north of the border, and step up the demolition of homes near the southern border. The destruction of bridges and homes marks a significant escalation in Israel's military campaign in Lebanon, which was pulled into the regional war on March 2nd when armed group has entered into Israeli territory. Not failure.
Whoa.
Is making the most of its operations in Iran, not only eliminating Iranian missile stockpile, also testing out new, never-before-seen weapons against its enemy. 3 new weapons, in particular, have been used to deadly effect against Iranian targets, perfectly demonstrating the United States' unrivaled strength on the global stage, an unwavering commitment to innovate, expand, and evolve its arsenal. So here's a closer look at 3 of those weapons, including their technical specification, capacities, and how each of them have been used in Iran so far. The first, and arguably most exciting of the 3, is the Precision Strike Missile, or PrSM for short. The story of this missile goes back to 2016, when several big defense firms, Lockheed Martin, Boeing, and Raytheon, announced their plans to bid on a new US Army project intended to replace the MGM-140 Army Tactical Missile System, more commonly known as ATACMS. ATACMS missiles have been in service in T1, proving their worth in numerous conflicts over the years, including Operation Desert Storm and Operation Iraqi Freedom. More recently, they've been seen in the Russia-Ukraine war, used by Ukrainian forces in numerous significant strikes against high-value enemy targets, such as Russian air defense systems and ammunition storage facilities. But even the best, most effective weapons eventually need to be replaced, and the US Army is always looking for ways to level up its offensive capabilities. It wants missiles that struck power seen superior speeds. And so has intended for this missile to have a maximum range of around 300 kilometers. This was far beyond the 190-mile, 300-kilometer range of the ATACMS, but also remained within the strict limits dictated by the Intermediate Range Nuclear Forces Treaty, INF Treaty, which the US and Soviet Union co-signed back in 1980. Then, in 2019, the US withdrew from the treaty, leaving for the PrSM to go even further than planned. 310 miles was no longer the peak, it was the baseline, with the Army announcing plans to extend the missile's range up to and beyond the 400-mile mark, potentially even pushing past 600 miles with future variants. The best part is that
doesn't